So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
All right, so we've been talking about that compass, that grid compass or compass grid, which is the grid really of the calculus on the level of absolute Christian Science. That grid of the calculus of the Word, Christ, Christianity, and science as our method for finding any specific answer. Every specific answer, each specific answer. So now the infinite encompassment of divine science. Remember, we have seen that divine science is that which encompasses all, encompasses the whole of being. Now that realm can be calculated through the compass of absolute Christian Science. Every specific within the general can be calculated. Isn't that terrific? It's just a wonder, an absolute wonder. And every science looks for this, and in some way must have this within their science in order to render it practical, you see, in order to render it both pure and applied, in other words. So we're moving into that consciousness of absolute Christian Science where we see that compass, and I'd like really each of you to take your textbook this afternoon or later today and go over that section in the Apocalypse chapter, the 16th chapter of the textbook, where Mary Baker Eddy explains the city foursquare and the city of our God. And you know that when she speaks about the city of our God, she says, northward, its gates open to the North Star. The Word, the polar magnet of revelation, gives an absolutely clear sense of the Word. And then she gives a Christ sense, and she says, eastward now, that city of our God opens eastward to the star seen by the wise men of the Orient, who followed it to the manger of Jesus. You just hear how specific that is, don't you? That they followed the star of the Christ to a specific goal, a specific place. They followed something very specific, and it led them to something absolutely specific, absolutely unique. Southward, she says, to the genial tropics with the Southern Cross in the skies, the cross of Calvary, which binds human society into solemn union, a beautiful sense of Christianity. And finally, westward, to the grand realization of the golden shore of love and the peaceful sea of harmony, that fulfillment and all-inclusiveness of science, everything being brought really to its highest standpoint at the point of science. And so she indicates those four. And further, John Dorley could see that Mrs. Eddy used various combinations of the synonymous terms, the capitalized terms, those capitalized terms of life, truth, and love, really. She didn't only speak of life, truth, love, divine principle love, as we know them in divine science, as the one life, the one truth, the one love, the one divine principle love, characterizing Word, Christ, Christianity, and science. but she used certain definite, specific combinations in her textbook. The combination of life, truth, and love, truth, life, and love, and truth and love. And through his research and his spiritual sense, his research into the usage of these combinations throughout the textbook, we now understand today the laws of life, truth, and love as they appear on the level of absolute Christian Science. So you have the law of the Word, of life, truth, and love, as the great law of impulsion, the impulsion that brings forth every idea. Every individual idea really is brought forth through that impulsion of life, truth, and love. And in the Christ, the law of truth, life, and love, that is able to specify, to take the general truth, any general truth, to take truth itself, and to translate it to a specific truth. This is the Christ, and this is what that law explains. And you have the law of life and love as the law of Christianity, showing really that every idea that is brought forth by the creative impulsion of life, truth, and love, and made specific by the Christ of truth, life, and love, every one of them is held in the embrace, in the hold of life and love, in the fatherhood of life and the motherhood of love. It is maintained, in other words, and sustained by life, and held and nurtured and fostered and conserved by love. This is the realm in which every idea has its being. Preserved by life, conserved by love. It's a great law that shows us what holds, and again this is Christianity, what holds, what the principle is that holds each idea. It's life and love. And life and love eternalize. You see, they eternalize each idea. It's a law of eternalization, that each individual creation is eternalized and held by its creator. And then you have a law at the point of science that picks up the Word, the Christ, and Christianity, and lifts them into the highest standpoint for that level, the standpoint of science. And here we have the law of truth and love. It's truth and love that will lift it all to the standpoint of science. And science is always giving us the beingness, you see, of the Word, the Christ, and Christianity. So that law of truth and love says, actually, every creation, every idea has always existed one with its creator, its principle. It has always been one with its creator. The individual creation of an individual idea has always been at one with its creator. So that actually an idea never really needs to be impelled forth as though it weren't before that, you see, as though it didn't exist before that. As though there had to be something bringing it forth at some particular point or at some particular time or place. As though there could have been a condition, a state of being, wherein that idea wasn't yet. You see. But life, truth, and love, truth, life, and love, life and love, are the means for us of explaining the fact of science. The fact of science that every idea, every individual idea exists already in its principle. This is what truth and love means. Love says, I, love, hold truth, each truth within myself. It's, you see, it's implied there. It is implicate in the meaning of love is this oneness with truth, this fact of truth and love being one. I am love, because I hold and contain within myself truth, the whole of truth, the whole truth about that specific truth, the whole truth about that idea. So this is the background against which we are weighing now soul and soul's ideas. And it's a big background, isn't it? A big background. So now for us, where we are in our orientation, soul is the creator, and soul's idea or individual ideas are the creation. Soul's ideas are the creation. And what soul says about ideas, it says about every idea. Is everyone with me at this point? Are you clear? Good. We had a little detour, a wonderful detour to look at those levels really from the standpoint of the Bible and the textbook, and to realize that this is where we have gathered our authority for everything that we are now doing as we investigate these 7 synonymous terms and their ideas. And so, soul, what is soul doing in respect to every idea, as we realize that on this level of absolute Christian Science, soul is the creator and soul's ideas are the creation. What does soul as the word say? It says, I, soul, identify every idea, each idea. I give each idea its identification. I, soul, define it. That's why every idea is what it is and not what another idea is, you see? It's defined definitely. Isn't that beautiful? It gets its definiteness from soul. You can just feel the implications breaking in, that we get our definiteness, we get our definition, our identity from soul. Soul defines us. If we just take a little drop to the level of Christian Science, these are the implications for us of what we are seeing here in the relationship of soul to soul's idea. That we are what we are, and not something else, not somebody else, not another individual, because of our relationship with soul, because soul makes us what we are. And so, in terms of ideas, every idea is defined definitely. It gets its definiteness from soul. Soul is the identifying principle for each idea. It brings the definition of each idea. It makes each idea distinct identity. This is the creative sense of soul as the word. Can you hear that? Then we'll see that there are those ideas that show us that soul is giving to each idea something that is of the nature of the Christ. Soul causes each idea to have the seed within itself. This is so gorgeous. You can feel it coming right down from that unchangeability of soul that we had in science itself, the unchanging nature of soul itself. Now, soul gives that to each idea. And what is that called? You see, in the Bible, in Genesis, in the 3rd day of creation, that was called the seed within itself. That's the Christ, isn't it? That's the Christ. You know where that terminology comes from? Soul in the 3rd day of creation. We know that those days of creation are in the word order, those 7 days, and that word order is itself patterned by the 4. So that order has 3 great breaks in it. And the first break that we see is at the point of the Word as the Christ, where the Word as the Christ comes in, at the point really of soul as soul in that development. And it is there that the symbolism from the Bible is the seed within itself. The symbol for the ability within being, within the idea, within the genesis of the idea, the ability for that idea to reproduce itself. So you have those ideas coming in here, do you not? The seed within itself, the giving of infinite gender or kind, you see, and the enabling of every idea to reproduce itself. Can you hear how that's embedded in the unchangeability of soul, in the changelessness of soul? That an idea can never be destroyed, it can never be damaged, can never be wiped out, because soul, as the Christ, gives it the nature of the seed within itself, that it is infinitely self-reproducing. It's stamped with the nature of soul, so it is able to represent itself. An idea represents soul. It reproduces soul. It has infinite gender, the infinite gender of soul. I stop because I just hear how soul is expressing that idea of infinite gender through the manifestation, the expression of all ideas, infinite ideas. That's why you have infinite gender, because every idea is itself a gender of soul. And that gender itself, the gender of each idea, can reproduce and represent itself. It itself has infinite gender. You just feel this kind of telescoping inwards of these ideas. Can you hear that? Every idea is expressing a gender of soul, is the expression of a gender of soul. And that idea itself has infinite gender. So you have gender within gender. You have kind within kind, or sort within sort. And this is how the infinite withinness of soul is expressed. It's expressed everywhere, in everything. And it means that an idea can express itself without a single limitation. There's no limitation to idea. And then we feel that sense of Christianity coming in, and we see that this is why soul is ever fully represented, you see, fully represented, that soul is never without its representation. You see how Christianity depends on the Christ to be what it is. It depends on that fact that every idea represents soul, reproduces soul, has infinite gender. So soul, when you have the infinite realm of that in expression, this is Christianity, where soul is ever fully represented, never without its representation. It's never without its representative. Now the representative is the individual idea. Soul can never be deprived of its representative. An individual idea is a representative of soul. It represents or represents soul in an individual way. It will represent the whole of soul, but individually. It itself isn't the whole of soul, but it represents the whole of soul in an individual way. And it has that quality of ongoingness, we could say, that we often feel with Christianity, namely in this case, that it is ever appearing. An idea is ever appearing. There's no break in its appearance, no hiatus in its appearance, no interruption in its appearance. There's never a hiatus or stoppage or cessation to that fact that the idea appears continually as what it is. because it is an idea of soul. So we perhaps think of appearing, that sense of appearing, as something coming into view, and this is really what we experience at the further level, the impact at the further level, that we have something new constantly coming into our view. But with ideas, it's different. It's something different. That in absolute Christian Science, ideas are ever appearing as what they are because they have the seed within themselves. Why do they have that seed within themselves? What is that? It's the ability to keep on being what soul has identified them to be. Can you hear that? Beautiful, beautiful relationship of Word, Christ, Christianity. And how would science see that? What does science say about it? What can we see that those ideas are now from the standpoint of science, as science expresses the relationship of soul to its individual idea? Science says that relationship, from my standpoint, is nothing but the scientific translation of principle to idea. The translation of principle to idea. This is not an idea of principle, it's an idea of soul. That fact that there is the translation of principle to idea. You find this in the Soul Compendium, that soul has all to do with that translation. It's a very great touch of the Christ in it. But this is how science would see the relationship of soul to every one of soul's ideas, to every idea. I wonder if you can hear that. You see that when considered from the standpoint of the calculus, translation is an office that belongs to the Christ. We know that. So we have now a lot of things coming in, and we have to keep them sorted, and we have to keep them clear. We have to remember our orientation, that when we ask the question that we are asking of our subject, namely the question of all of soul's ideas on the level of absolute Christian Science, which is conveying the highest standpoint, namely which gives us the sense of science, then we see that everything that we have seen in soul as the Word, soul as the Christ, soul as Christianity, can be gathered up into a statement of the scientific fact that soul translates principle to idea. This is how science sees the relationship between soul and soul's ideas. Is that clear? Good. So remember, it's always our orientation. And if you say to me, yes, but isn't that the Christ? Isn't it? Yes. Yes, it has a great deal to do with the Christ. In fact, in the Christ order, you know that at the point of soul, the whole office of soul in the Christ order is to translate. But our orientation is to take the whole realm of ideas that we know, answer the question, how does soul relate to soul's creation, to its individual creation? This is a question for the level of absolute Christian Science. And the orientation is that we take all of the ideas that characterize soul on that level, and now we ask which ones have a Word sense, which have a Christ sense, which have a Christianity sense, and now which of those ideas have a science sense to them. And the orientation is that science will present the highest of those ideas somehow within that whole range The highest standpoint will be depicted by what ideas. So you have an idea that will somehow be the way science views the whole thing. And science says, actually, all that's going on here is the translation of principle to its idea. It's the fact that soul has the office to translate principle to idea. And why do we say principle here? Is that throwing us off? Do we think that is something about the fourth synonymous term and not the third? Principle is shorthand. You know, we have to learn the shorthand of science. It's a beautiful, beautiful language, the shorthand of science. And so principle is shorthand for all seven. It symbolizes all seven. So when we say principle, we actually mean all seven. It means what? That soul is governing the translation of mind to mind's individual ideas. Soul is governing, overseeing, has the office of ruling and regulating, you see. That rule of soul becomes the regulation of soul to every idea. How does it govern? How does it regulate? It regulates the translation of mind to mind's individual ideas, of spirit to spirit's individual ideas, of soul to soul's individual ideas. Principle, life, truth, and love to their individual ideas in the office of translation. So there would be no translation of the synonymous term, the capitalized term, of the sevenfold nature at all, to the ideas of that nature. There would be none whatsoever without soul in its office, because it is the office of regulating that translation from principle to idea. Isn't that beautiful? So you see that we have to learn the shorthand of science, and that shorthand is always coming up, and we use it more and more, we rely on it more and more, moving away from wordiness to symbol, to higher and higher symbols, and what those symbols imply. Okay. So I think you're terrific to be able to move with the whole dynamic of this week together. I really do, and thank you for that support. So science is looking back on the other three. It's looking back on the Word, Christ, and Christianity, and it says, what is the essence of what is going on there? What is the big overriding idea that expresses what has happened in the Word, the Christ, and Christianity? And science interprets that what has happened is that principle has been translated to idea. That's the great essence of it all. It's very delicate, isn't it? Very beautiful.